2021. Well, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Dr. Catchell,
Yeah.
Mr. Van Willy,
Yes.
Ms. Gaines,
Yes.
All present and accounted for. I noticed that the item number 3 on today's agenda is discussion and action, the assessor's office to present reports documenting assessor's approval and disapproval of homestead exemptions submitted for the 2021 tax year. Who's presenting? Please
Thank you,
come
Dr.
and,
Mitchell.
yeah, come and identify yourself for the board officially to tape. And if you need any amplification, that microphone is on.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. This is not something that our office has historically done, but we did this last year and will continue to do so in the future. Under Oklahoma law, the assessor's office is required to provide to the Board of Equalization or to make their homestead applications available to the Board of Equalization in case you want to change decision that's been made by the assessor. And so for this year, for the 2021 tax year, our office has granted 65 partial homesteads. We have denied 33 applications for homestead, and we have granted 9,241 applications for homestead. The applications that we denied, each one of those individuals had the right to file an appeal to come before the Board of Equalization. And to my knowledge, we've not had any of those appealed. But under the law,
Do they have still time they could still do it, or?
not because of our decision to deny the application. However, today what I'm presenting to the board, and I actually printed off the entire list of all of the accounts and the names of the individuals that had submitted an application for exemption. If the board would like to ask to review any of those applications, to look at the decision made by the assessor and to overturn that decision, I apologize. That's telling me that I've got this meeting. Sorry about that. I made it timely. I apologize to the board.
No problem.
If the board chooses to review the application and then to deny any of those applications for a homestead, at that time, that taxpayer still has the right to file a protest to be heard on the basis that they think they're entitled to that homestead. So what I'm here to do today is to present to the board the fact that we've submitted the documents to the county clerk as the secretary for the board for you to review. If you're wanting to look at any of the names, they are listed like this. So if you would choose any and all of the applications you would like our office to show to you, we'd be happy to do that at a later time at your convenience. And then if there's action the board wants to take that's different from what we've done, that's just fine. Obviously, by law, you're entitled to that. If the board chooses not to, then we would ask for today, if possible, for the board to approve the action that has been taken by our office. And once again, that's granting 9,241 homestead applications, denying 33 applications, and granting 65 partial homestead exemptions. And just for clarification, a partial homestead, as an example, would be if you had multiple owners listed on the deed for a property and just one of them lives there, we would just give a partial homestead exemption on that property. Or if you have an adult child and their parent listed entitled on a deed, the child only lives on that property. By law, they're only entitled to a partial homestead exemption on the property.
And just so I'm clear about the paperwork you're filing today, that is all in a single report requiring a single motion.
There are 3 separate documents. One includes all of the homesteads that were granted, the over 9,000 homesteads. There's one that specifically lists the denied homestead applications and one that lists specifically the partial. So yes, if the board so chooses today, we would ask for a motion to be granted by the board, sustaining the decisions made by the assessor on all of those applications for homestead exemption for the tax year 2021.
Let me just clarify so that my clerk is clear. Are you going to need separate motions because they're different? It's okay. That's all. I just want to make sure we get the paperwork straight.
Thank you.
Let me simply ask a couple of questions and give my members a chance to ask if they wish. Can you generalize in some way for the board? I'm just trying to get it on the record. What would be the major principle? Is it whose names are on the title, who's living there? What is the issue around which you have to make that decision in the office?
Thank you for asking that. So whenever an application for a homestead exemption is filed, by direction of the statute and the Oklahoma Tax Commission, we have to check the deed that's on file with the county clerk to make sure that the individual who's made the application actually is entitled to the property. It's on file where it's supposed to be in the Tulsa County Clerk's office. In addition, that they were living in that property. Now, usually that's just based upon them filing that application where they state, I've lived in there. I was living there on January 1st. That they have no other homestead that's outstanding. Usually those are the ones that we look at. So it's their place of residence as of January 1 of the tax year. They are entitled on that property. And the consideration is also given to any other owners that may not be living there.
That was just my point of trying to make sure we had something on the record. Since we haven't heard these in a deliberate way in previous years. Charles or Ruth, do any of you have any questions you would like to ask her?
Somewhat of a general question. Are these contentious issues or are they just folks failing to get in, get it done?
For example, those that may have been denied would have been those who did not reside in the property on January 1 or did not have the deed on file with the county clerk's office sometime. But no, it's not contentious to be.
So there's no redress if they don't get it filed, they've got to wait till next year?
That's correct. Or if we receive one that's been filed out of time, March 15th is the deadline by statute, we will hold on to that application to be processed for the following year.
Can you have, you indicated you can't have more than one homestead exemption. Does that include outside of the state also?
Yes, and actually an issue has come up. A gentleman moved out of the county of Tulsa, out of Tulsa County, out of the state of Oklahoma in 2011 and moved down to Texas. And now Texas is coming after him because he had also claimed a homestead down there when he moved down there. And so in Oklahoma, if you move without notifying the assessor's office that you're no longer residing in that place, you can be required to pay back that tax exemption that you got, double the amount, as well as on any interest or penalties that have been assessed or would have been assessed. So, correct. Not only can you not have a double one in the state of Oklahoma, you can't have one in another state.
This may be totally. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. I'm just trying to understand. I'm thinking of myself selling, moving out of the state. And if I file the deed, then automatically I've done what I needed to do. That is when I sold the property, the deed was filed to who I sold it to.
Correct.
Would that automatically remove my homestead, or do I still have to tell you I'm gone, I sold the property?
The deed will trigger our office changing who is listed as the owner of the property as of January 1. So that will cause our office to actually remove or blow the
homestead.
exemption off.
Okay, so I don't have, the owner, the ex-owner doesn't have to do anything other than file or with going through the sales process and filing.
Correct. If our office fails to remove that homestead exemption with a new owner in place, it's still in your name. It's our fault. No
Okay,
penalty against you.
okay. That was all I was kind of curious about. Is there any other thing before I make this motion you wish to bring before the
No,
board
I think
up?
that's it.
Okay. I move, as I understand, to accept this report from the tax assessor's office that they've asked for our approval and the appropriate disapproval of homestead exemptions that were submitted for the 2020 tax year. 2021, yes. Is there a second to my motion? Second. It's been moved and seconded. We'll vote as the roll is called.
Dr. Ketchel,
Yes.
Mr. Van Willen,
Yes.
Ms. Gaines.
Yes.
So ordered by action of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I be excused?
Please. You're welcome to stay. But we are such a delightful rude, don't have to be serious. Why would anyone leave? All right. Now we go to our actual protest agenda items for today. Protest number 1319 and 1321, our top two, are both listed, owners being TKG Smith Farm LLC. I have been shown a document that the clerk received through the appeal process that said that they wish to withdraw both of these appeals that are on today's agenda. As I understand it, all I need to do is make such a motion and sign the paperwork.
If you can do each one individually.
I will, yes. The first one, therefore, on the agenda that we're withdrawing board is our first item, 1319. It is the one, well, we've already said it's TKG Smith Farm LLC. And there is a request that we not consider and therefore withdraw it. I so move. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to withdraw that agenda item from today's consideration. We'll vote as the roll is called.
Dr. Catchell,
Yes.
Mr. Van Willy,
Yes.
Ms. Gaines,
Yes.
The second item then on our protest agenda is item number 1321. It is the same owner, TKG Smith Farm LLC, and again, they have informed us in writing that they wish this item to be removed from today's agenda. I so order. I'm sorry, I so moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll vote as the roll is called.
Dr. Catchell,
Yes.
Mr. Van Willy,
Yes.
So
Ms. Gaines?
ordered. I'm sorry.
Ms. Gaines,
Yes.
So ordered by action of the board. All right, let me simply sign those documents and then we'll proceed to the next item on the posted agenda. No, I'm good. Yeah, I won't do it. Can I put withdraw up on the top line? No. I got the letters attached, right?
Yes.
All right, moving on to the next item on our agenda board. It is 1329. It is the Ruffin Hotel of Tulsa LLC. And is that, you're right, 1322. Okay. Keep watching me. And this is a telephone hearing, so that's why she's doing that. Who am I talking to? Super, thank you.
Hey, Brownie.
Yes, Mr. Browning, this is Ted Catchell. I chair the Tulsa Tulsa County Equalization Board. And we're here to hear the protest you have submitted to us about your property assessment. As I understand it, I have some documents in front of me. I'll read those into the record. That is the initial statements on the form. And then I'll give you a chance to address the matter any way you wish. There are two other members of the board also present making up the equalization board. One is Charles Vanderwilly, the other is Ruth Gaines, and they may wish to comment or ask questions as we go through this hearing. So first off, let me say that this property is at 1902 East 71st Street here in Tulsa. That it was previously on for $16,309,400. The assessor is proposing to lower it as a fair market value for this tax year to $13,754,000 even. And he says in his initial formal appeal that he wishes it to be corrected to a value of $407,545, and for the following reasons: the income statements he has provided and the STAR report, both of which support a lower value. All right, Mr. Browning, you've heard what I read from the formal. What do you wish to add, or just to inform you even though we come into these hearings with awareness of the agenda, we do not see any of the supporting documents, so you're perfectly at liberty to take us through them if you wish. And then after that, of course, the assessor staff who is handling your particular protest will come and address the board, and then we'll talk about it with both of you. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ketch. I appreciate that. If you have in front of you the page 1 of our exhibit titled Hotel Motel Income Valuation Worksheet, please let me know if that's there. You can see that document.
Okay, let me see. I got, is this your, okay, I'm looking at a hotel motel valuation worksheet. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And so if we could start there, this is an analysis similar to what an investor would do if they were going to acquire the property. The type of analysis that a buyer would put together to determine fair market value in exchange, which is what our chart is here.
Yes.
If you start by, pardon me?
No, I'm sorry. Just agreeing. Please go ahead.
Yes. The number of rooms, as you can see, if you start from kind of the middle of the page down, is 378. That's how many rooms are in the hotel for lease. The average daily room rate, as you can see, is listed as $107.45. If I could draw your attention then just directly to the right where it says 2020 actual, that actually $107.45 is the ADR that we had for the year of 2020. If you go one more over, you can see in 2019, the ADR, the actual average daily room rate was $102.50. So just to kind of give you some context as to what the ADR, the average daily rate has been, it's actually up a little bit from where it was in 2019 for the 2020 tax year. If you had all rooms listed sold at $107.45, your gross potential income would be $14,824,877. If you see that number there kind of in the middle of the page. To that, we have to apply an occupancy rate, and you can see that we plugged in 20.6%. 20% is the occupancy rate that this hotel had for the calendar year of 2020. And again, if you go over to the next category, the next line item over, you'll see it's there under the 2020 actual and 47.6 under the 2019 actual. So the income, the average daily room rate went up a little bit, but less than half of the occupancy that it had in the year prior. And I'll just preface this by saying 46.7%, the occupancy in 2019, it isn't very good. It isn't what a hoteler wants. A hoteler wants occupancies that are in the 70s to be able to make justification for the cost of acquiring, for example, a property. Going back over to the left of the model, the effective gross income, if you use 20.6% as occupancy, is $3,053,925. And you can see if you look to the right, 2.8 million and some change is what the actual effective room rate was, effective gross income was in 2020, the 6.6 million in the year prior. Plus we had other income of 1,771,276 at 58% is what we're estimating. But the actual other income in 2020 was only 751,714, 2.788 in 2019. That other income is food, beverage, other sales from the store that's there inside that sells little, knickknacks and things. Obviously, that is affected by the amount of occupancy that you have, and it took a big hit. In the model, we're projecting effective income of $4,825,201. If you look to the right, $3,558,949 is what the actual effective income was in 2020. It was $9.4 million in 2019. That establishes the income side. And again, we're projecting $4.8 million when it actually had $3.5 million in income in 2020, using some optimistic expectations of other income. If you go down to the next line, and you'll see that highlighted, those bars are highlighted in kind of an orange color. We've got to try to determine expense. 5% for management, 3% for reserves, and 78% for expense, excluding property tax, is what this model would adopt. 78% for expense is pretty typical for what this hotel has operated under for the past 3 years. It's been actually a little higher than that. It's been 80. 78 is not unusual for a hotel like this. And the low end of the market for a hotel of this nature is about 65 or so. The high end is in the 90s. It's been operating in the 70s. If you use 78% as the expense, which is lower than what they actually had in 2020, you get a stabilized net operating income highlighted in green at $537.72. If you look to the right, you can see the 2020 actual net operating income was negative almost $1 million, $999,401 loss. Obviously, a hotel like this can't continue to operate in the black with that type of occupancy of 20%. It's a killer for the property. If you stabilize the expense, you use the actual average daily room rate and the actual occupancy from 2020, which is what we typically do in a hotel model. You come up with 530 in NOI at a 9% cap plus the effective tax rate. It comes in right at 5.1 million, minus personal property at 15%, which is a standard deduction using the Rushmore approach. $4,407,000 as a value based on the operations in 2020 with a stabilized expense at 78%. Now, I understand that that's a big difference between 12 million, which is the current taxable assessment, and 4.4 million. The other end or level of expense that you might anticipate for a hotel like this at the lowest end is 65%. And I just wanted to draw your attention to that if you applied instead of 78% for expense, you applied 65% for expense. The conclusion is $9.6 million. Both using 65% and using 78% are going to be propping up income that wasn't there in 2020. You'd have to take, again, the position of an investor and looking forward as to whether or not you thought that this negative trend was going to continue. And I can tell you from the industry standard, they're seeing some better numbers overall. They're seeing better numbers in hotel sales, particularly in leisure travel. They're not seeing the type of positive sales that they need to see in business travel yet. But we anticipate in 2021, our operating statement is going to look better, and it's not going to be $1 million in negative. We don't know what it's going to be yet, but we don't anticipate it's going to be $1 million in negative. Optimistically, 580,000 is what that figure would be based on this model. And if you use a 65% versus a 78% expense, about 1 million, right at 1.1 million. It's going to be in that range somewhere. And again, we're kind of having to guess where it's going to be in 2021 and how it's going to look moving forward. The problem, we're not out of the woods. The problem's not over by any stretch. We know that this is going to last years, that this isn't just a short-term problem, that we have this type of occupancy issue. And we know that moving forward, we are going to have and are budgeting for a continued low income. If I could draw your attention now, the operating statements are also there in the numbered pages, but if I could get you to go to page 28 of the exhibit.
Now we're going to the STAR report. Is that it?
That's correct. And page 28 is the second page of the STAR report. Let me know when you're there.
I'm there, but let's wait just a minute. The board's getting there. Okay, we're ready. Go for it.
I'm there.
All right, on page 28, this is the summary at a glance of the STAR report. You probably have seen these before. This is the analysis of the property's operations plus what the market has done in their subset over the past year. And if you look in the middle box, you see ADR. You'll see categories of my property, competitive set, and index. If you go to the very bottom of that box, it says 107.45 is a running 12-month ADR for my property, for this specific property. If you go over one, you will see that the competitive set had an ADR of $85.80. In other words, this property was running a higher average daily room rate than its competitive set. Now, let's look a little bit to the left, to the next box to the left where it says occupancy percentage. Again, if you go over to that category that says my prop, if you go to the very bottom, the running 12-month occupancy was 20.6. That's for this property at 20% occupancy. If you go one box over, you can see the competitive set had a occupancy percentage of 30.6. Either way you slice this, if you use the ADR from the competitive set, the average market of 85 and 30% for occupancy, or if you use 107.45, the actual property's ADR and the actual property's occupancy at 20.6, it's going to come out to be about the same. It was a balancing act for this particular property. It ends up being exactly at the same place, either way that you do it. The point that we wanted to make with this is an occupancy in the market of 30.6% indicates that this is not a one-off property problem, that is, for this property. This is an overall market problem. The market for the entire competitive set at 30% is staggering. It is way below what can be, feasible and attainable for this type of property. And again, unfortunately, that's not going to correct overnight. It's correcting slowly. But until business travel comes back to where it was prior to COVID, we're going to be dealing with low occupancies for this project. In summary, we recognize that what this concludes, this page one analysis concludes at 4.4 million, is a very, very low value. And we understand this is just what the numbers indicate. If you stabilize it as optimistically as you can be. We don't know on January 1st of 2021 what we could sell the property for, or even if there was going to be a buyer. That's a big question mark. I think it is reasonable to assume at the low end of the market, $4.4 million is reasonable, stabilizing the net operating income, and using a 65% expense at the high end of the market, 9.6, and anything over actually can't be supported.
Okay, Mr. Browning, the only other, kind of looking at the STAR report quickly, if you skip over a couple pages to page 31, where they list, the comparable, properties, I assume that's what that list is about. You know what I'm looking at now? And
Yes.
it's by name: Marriott, Doubletree, Comfort Inn, Hyatt Place, Renaissance, Holiday Inn, and Wingate. Is that what
Yes.
you're assuming from these also? That these are
Yes,
comparables?
those are the competitive properties identified through the STAR report. Those are, including the Marriott Tulsa Southern Hills, had a total occupancy of 30% in 2020.
Okay, and that's what you're showing us on page 28 that you just talked about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you've already mentioned, obviously, the big difference in this year, which is the COVID-19 pandemic that we've all been dealing with. And undoubtedly, that has had an enormous impact on business travel, but also even personal travel. And so these hotels are reflecting that. The question always, as you know, I'm sure since you deal with a lot of these properties from year to year, how Tulsa County is going to deal with a real estate property that is a functioning business, such as these hotels are, when everybody knows this has been a horrible, but for that reason, not typical year. And yet, aren't you asking for almost a 50% reduction in the value of the property? Not, in other words, in 1 year, you want to drop it from where its previous assessment. Previously, the market on this property was what? 18,817,700. The assessor staff went in there this year, obviously trying to look at it in relationship to both the COVID, but also maybe just some ongoing depreciation for a property that's been there for years, and said, well, okay, we'll take it down from 18 to 16. Then I assume they had an informal conversation and then took it down to 13,754, which is where they presented to us today anyway. Why do you think 1 year's experience, even if it's hard on the whole market for hotels here in Tulsa, why do you think it's fair for us trying to assess these properties to take as much as a 50% reduction in their value?
Well, sir, I'm not taking it just as 1 year. If that were the case, I would be projecting that the net operating income should be negative 1 million.
I see.
And that's not our position at all. This is not a short-term problem. This is not a problem that is going to only be reflected in the 2020 operations. It's going to be reflected going forward. We know that this impact on the hotel industry, which by my experience at least, was hit harder than any other industry out there due to the COVID issue. We know that that's not going to just materialize in 2020 operations and impact the 2020 operations. It's going to impact the next several years. And the latest I've heard is it may take 4 or 5 years before it gets back to normal, if it does. The key is whether or not we can get business travel back. Leisure travel is not going to be enough to support the number of hotel units that are out there in the marketplace now. They weren't built for leisure travel in Tulsa. They were built for business and leisure travel, with a primary emphasis on business, frankly. And that's what this hotel primarily benefited from, was business travel. We're doing this hearing, or at least I'm doing this hearing from my desk. I'm not doing it there locally. And there's a lot that are being done just like this remotely because of the impact of COVID. That multiply that times the number of businesses and the number of business interactions that are going on right now across the country. Are we going to like to flip this back to where it was, now that businesses have seen that they can operate, a lot of them at least, remotely and be more efficient? I don't think, in everything I've read, I don't think, again, that this is going to be a quick turnaround. And there's no evidence out there that supports that it will be. So this property is going to be suffering into the future. The market may or may not ever come back to where it was. When you're looking.
Yes, go ahead.
Duration. Sorry?
I'm sorry, go ahead and summarize whatever way you want.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, a buyer's gonna know this on January 1st, 2021, if this property were gonna transfer, that this isn't gonna be a switch that's gonna flip off. Now, the extreme, in my opinion, is 4.4 million. If you stabilize a positive NOI of $530,000 versus negative last year. That would be the worst case scenario. If you use 63 for 65%, that is, for expense, you're at a value of $9.9 million. And that's the reason this property owner is here today. Either one don't get you to the cap market value of $12 million currently.
Okay, I'm going to ask other members of my board to address any questions or make comments that they want you to respond to before I ask for the assessor staff to speak to this appeal. Please, Charles.
No doubt, there's hurt there, but this is a gargantuan request. That's the gap that I'm not sure I can get across. And I'm not sure what the number should be, but 4,000,004.
Yeah.
Compared to 13,700.
Well, that's why I say it's more than 50%.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah. Ruth, what about you? Is that your
I'd
concern?
like a clarification of what he said at the very end.
Yeah.
That ended with 12 million. What, do you have that on your?
I think Mr. Browning, she's asking in your summary now, you used two different numbers. I think at one point you were talking about the 4,000,005, and then you said something about the 12 million. Was that because that was what you thought the assessor was asking as opposed to your number?
I'm sorry, what I was trying to convey was the value that falls in at 4.4 million is supported by using a positive net operating income of 530,000, being optimistic. There's one area that you could even be more optimistic if you were going to take a look at this, and that is in expense. The typical range of expense for a hotel like this, I agree, is in 78% in this analysis. It's between, in the high end, 90%, and in the low end, 65%. That's the typical range for a full service hotel like this. If you apply 65% expense versus 78 and leave everything else the same, the value comes in at 9.6 million versus 4.4. That's our range. 4.4 is the lowest possible end and 9.6 is the highest end, considering what the market parameters are for a hotel like this.
All right, Ruth, did that help you? He didn't go back to the 12 million. I think he was referencing, as I said, closer to where the county is right now. But he thinks the range should be somewhere between 4.4 and 9 million. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to ask that the assessor staff come forward now and present their view on this matter, and then we'll have a conversation between all of us after we've heard. Please identify yourself for the record.
I'm Tessia Davis with the Tulsa County Assessor's Office. Just want to make sure you have.
Sure. Thank you. First question I usually ask of you is, have they seen anything like this presentation?
No, they have not. No.
Okay. In terms of your conversation, did you have an informal conversation?
We did,
with
yes.
them? Okay. Thank you. Please continue then.
All right, so right at the top, I want to highlight that this property was reduced by 27% already this year. So tax year 2020 notice
I'm sorry, it
value,
was what?
I reduced it by 27%
Okay.
already this year. So the notice value in 2020 was about 18.8 million. I brought it down to the 16, and then after our informal, I decided there was a little bit more wiggle room, and I reduced it to 13,754,000 even. The price per key as is right now is at the lower end, supported by the market at $36,387 a key, or price per unit. Like I just stated, I already made some pretty serious COVID-based concessions by eliminating any income derived from the restaurant, spa, meeting spaces, or in my income pro forma. The value requested today brings the key price down to the economy / motel level at $11,500 a room. And I also want to state that the lower end of his request is 50%, but that 4 million is really a 75% reduction, which is what he's requesting, which as far as taxes go, that would take about a decade to recapture that if we wanted to get back to the 2020 value. It's certainly going to be a multi-year issue. COVID is going to take some time to get people back out here and vacationing or doing business. We don't predict it taking a decade. We are seeing about 5 years. And then lastly, on this first page, I want to highlight that they just did an extensive multi-million-dollar interior remodel in order to increase the value of the hotel and maintain the flag. So they're all new rooms and lobbies as of November 2020. The building permit for that was over $10 million. The year before, in 2019, they had about.
They done?
They were finished in November 2020. So they were done before Citus.
And you said the first one was, I'm sorry, the last one was 10 million, the previous year was how much?
Correct. In 2020, the building permit was taken out for a little over 10 million. And in 2019, there was a building permit, I want to say, for almost 9 million. On the second page, it's the same page that you saw from me Wednesday. It's how the assessor's office approached valuation during COVID-19 for the hospitality sector. On the top left, you'll see that the hotel impact by type, it's very clear that a luxury or event-based property was hit the hardest. And that's why they received one of the largest reductions in value this year before formals at 27%. Every single hotel in Tulsa County was looked at this year, regardless of VI cycle. So I went and revalued every single hotel and looked at market parameters impacted by COVID. So all income pro formas utilize no greater than a 50% occupancy rate. And for here, I only used a 40%, which I'll get to on the next page. And then there's a reduced range of cap rates just to showcase the reduced amenities offered. Of course, their actuals are worse. That's obvious from what they've provided. But it is my job to value based on the market and what the data is showing me. So based on findings from Real Capital Analytics, CBRE baseline forecasts, and HDS Global Hospitality Services. On the third page is a map that kind of shows you where this property is and where actually their comps are. So as you can see, in this 139 number, I pulled this a couple weeks ago. That's the lowest rate I could find for what their ADR or their daily rate a couple weeks ago. So not Citus, 109 was on Citus. So the subject is now at $36,000 a key, and as you can see, it's right there with the Wingate, DoubleTree, and Hyatt. They're in the same range. And I also just wanted to show in comparison, the request is $11,500 a key, which is really reflective of a non-flag motel in Tulsa County right now.
And then on that page, I'm just looking at it, make sure I understand all
Yes.
the numbers. What you had, you just mentioned the 139 per.
Yes, the 139, when I was creating this map, this is just a Google snapshot, and I've added the key numbers on here, but that 139 is what Google has shown me as their daily rate for that day. And I created this a couple weeks ago, so not on Citus, but it's certainly bumped since Citus.
And the other keys that you're showing on this page range from 87 up to 102.
That's their daily rates. So what's in the boxes right here, the black boxes and then the red box, that's the price per unit or the key price. Yes, and then the blue boxes right here, that's just showing what these other comparative hotels were. That's what their asking price was that day for a night stay.
in terms of the income or the rental roll that he provided you with, this declaration that they actually were doing, what, 107
107.
actual?
I saw that in the information provided. I could not find it anywhere published, and it definitely isn't reflective of the market analysis I have, but on the next page, on the fourth page, you'll see I used $109, so we're about $2 off, and that's okay if we want to switch it down to 107. It's actually $20 lower than the lowest published rate I could possibly find.
That's
Because I really wanted my income approach to capture the worst of COVID. And then I use the lowest occupancy supported by the national market, which is 40%. I know that they're running at a 20 or 30%, but the 40% is really as low as I could get with the data. And I also did not include any income generated from their 24 meeting spaces, their restaurant, their coffee shop, their gift shop, their spa, their valet dry cleaning, their indoor gym or pool. There's no additional income. My income in the value of 13.7 just showcases the hotel itself. So that's basically it. That's my appraiser recommendation is to sustain the value at 13,754,000, just because I really tried to consider COVID and I've given it a big haircut. That's all I felt comfortable with that.
okay. Let's talk about the one other thing. I think you guys are pretty close on the cap rate, and I know that always comes up in the discussion of these kind of properties. As I read your fourth page there, you were using a 9.25. As I read his written document, I think he was still using, well, actually, the effective tax rate, he brought it up to 10.2, so 1 point more. Any sense about where you got your 9 point?
I did it for market analysis. It's uncapped, so the tax rate isn't included in
And
that.
I noticed you said something about upper mid-scale property. That's in terms of those alphabet numbers, he happens to have C+ on his as the class. What?
I would say this
could
is,
you-
I wouldn't call it a C+. I would say this is actually one of our nicest flagged hotels in Tulsa with a lot of amenities. That's where our office does business and has conventions. It's a giant. I worry that if we reduce this anymore, we set a precedent to absolutely destroy any hotel that runs an ADR of above $100.
So you put at least a B+ on it.
At least a B+, especially with the over $20 million of renovations we've done in the past 2 years.
Yeah. We're going to discuss some of those with him, obviously, in a minute, give him a chance to explain them. But is there anything else in your report that you think was, might say one of the big determinants of why even, see, I was a little surprised you guys were coming down quite so rapidly. I think we had this conversation on Wednesday also about another property. But what it is still you guys trying to adjust at least for the 1 year bad.
We tried to be extremely proactive. We know this is going to be a multi-year issue. We're not going to see 2020 values just pop right up, or 2019 values pop up again next year or this year. The range is between a 15% reduction and a 30% reduction with how I've configured my income pro forma, really with the 25 to 30% being reserved for those luxury hotels. So he calls it a C+, I call it a luxury, and it's actually to his benefit. I've given him the biggest concession of any hotel you'll see at the boards this year.
Let me give my other board members a chance to ask questions of you first, and then we'll go back to the conversation with Mr. Browning. Charles, did some pop out in the numbers for you other than some of the things I mentioned in passing?
The cap rate of 9.25, is that a kind of industry standard?
It's an industry standard so there's industry standards this year, and I decided to reduce the range of cap rates just because there's such reduced amenities. When we see a lower cap rate than, let's say, 9.25, that's really because it's a luxury full service hotel, which I would consider this a full service hotel in a normal year. This year, I'm really showing it as an upper mid-scale hotel. That 9.25 is really more reflective of a nice hotel that just doesn't have that many amenities. And yeah, it is based off of market parameters and standards.
Then is there a standard, the business personal, the 4 million
So the business personal is something that I can't really speak to. That would have to be in a different appeal section, but that 4 million, I would say is incredibly, that rendering of 4 million is incredibly low. That breaks it down with the amount of rooms I have to about $10 million $10,000 of business personal in each room. Especially with these newly remodeled rooms, there's no way there's only $10,000 of business personal in each room. So that $4 million is also, I would consider a very modest rendering of business personal value. I would, for hotels like this, I see between $5 to $15 million rendered business personal.
Ruth, what about you?
Is there any publication that rates the hotel?
This hotel, CoStar, I think will bring it up. I certainly wouldn't see it as anything lower than a B anywhere.
But is it rated in a publication?
Like alphabetically, A, B, or C, on CoStar, I think it's at a B. Just by
But you,
inspecting it, I see it as an A minus. It's an older hotel, but it's been renovated greatly, and it's also in a great area. So
I think what she was asking is, did you check it against some publication?
no, I mean, I used CoStar. I valued it. To me, it looks like an A minus to B plus property. That's
All
my
right,
opinion.
other questions?
No question.
Okay, Mr. Browning, you heard her version of how they achieved the recommendation to the board today to sustain this hotel's assessment even after trying to deal with the 1 year so far of the COVID impact on it. And her recommendation is still 13,754,000. As I understand, the final value range you were asking for would be like 4.5 to maybe 9 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So there's a big
Okay.
discrepancy there. The big number she came in with that I just wanted to check with you to make sure it's your understanding in terms of what the owners, of the information they gave you. What about these 2 years of remodeling at several $1 million each year over the last 2?
Yeah, that was put into motion back in 2016 and 2017 when Marriott told the franchisee that they were going to have to do what we call a PIP and essentially redo all of the rooms and redo the common areas if they were going to keep the flag. Otherwise, they were going to pull the flag. So not that it makes maybe economic sense to spend whatever the number was. It was a very large number to invest in it. But to keep the flag, franchisees are willing to do it because they know without the flag, they've got nothing. And obviously, in 2018, 2019, 2020, investing it to have a negative $1 million in net operating income wouldn't make much sense, you know. So it's not really a driving factor in value for the property other than it maintains its ability to operate in the marketplace as a Marriott.
Yes, well, that is, as you yourself pointed out, the franchisee is almost obligated economically if he's going to stay in the hotel business to do those kinds of investments. And seemingly he or she, whoever, thought it must have been worth the economic risk to do that, right?
Well, not really. In this instance, it's because of the age of the building. There was a lot of exterior work they had to do too, because there was some mold trapped on the outside. Many franchisees, many operators may have walked away from it at that point, but their personal model is to hold this within, it's a family-owned business, to hold this within the family for a long term. And because they made that decision to hold it for a long term, they could justify the cost of the PIP, or they would justify the cost of the PIP. Now, had they known that 2020 was going to happen, they may have made a different decision. Again, it's not sustainable to have $1 million of net operating income loss a year, especially when you put that much money into a property.
Certainly, I agree with that. Okay, I wanted to give you a chance, Mr. Brown. You've heard, the assessor's presentation today. Is there any particular issue that she raised that you wanted to, express a difference in opinion as an assessor?
I'm a little bit of a disadvantage because I can't see what the county has just walked through. I'm just, I'm just trying to take notes and listen the best that I could. But a couple of things, a couple of points that I would make. I know the ownership appreciates the 27% reduction in value that they've offered so far. It doesn't affect it tax-wise any, but it is moving the right direction. But just FYI, the 27% reduction that's been offered so far is against an 85% reduction in income from the past year. I mean, those are the hard facts. I think that probably we can argue about cap rate. Certainly, the CBRE study would say that an A+ property would have what would be a base cap rate in the 8s, which appears to be what's being applied here. But regardless, I think probably the biggest discrepancy we really have is occupancy. And if I understood the county's testimony correctly, they're applying a 40% occupancy from market parameters. I showed you the STAR report early on. And if you recall, the STAR report for the competitive set, this property is competing against directly in 2020 was 30%. So 10 points lower than what the county is applying. We can accept the county's modeling with a 30% occupancy rate, and the value is going to come in at right at $9.8 million. I think really we agree on a lot. If we could just agree on what economic reality is or was for this market at 30%, as based in the STAR report that you all have seen.
I certainly think the point you're making is a good one. I understand the economic issues about the difference in the occupancy, and you're reporting actual, which is even lower. I think what I struggle with, and I mean, I admit none of us know the future. The issue is always when you have a dramatic economic impact event like the pandemic we are enduring, how do you lay that on the future in terms of income or viability of a particular property like this one? I'm inclined to give you perhaps a bit more than the county is willing to this year, and I'll come up with a number soon, but I think by putting that range at 4.59, I think you've taken us way down below what the county can afford to reduce its tax base, even recognizing the enormous economic impact and indeed loss that you are reporting to the board at this time. But that's my opinion. We'll see how my colleagues feel about that. Mr. Browning, before I propose my number and let the board argue with me over it, is there any final summary about that range of the 4.5 to 9.8 that you're really comfortable? If you got it down to that 9.8, that would be where you think it's still within the market?
Yeah, based on what we anticipate moving forward and understanding, and I think we're all in agreement that this isn't just a short-term problem, that it is going to continue into next year and the year. And I believe that both the county and we have both said 5 years before this all, comes out and settles down. I think that's reasonable, but that being that range, but 9.8 is the high end. And again, considering 40% vacancy in the county's model, that's where we're at.
Certainly, I understand. You prefer the 30. She's proposing the 40 on that particular number. Let me go to my other members of the board. I'm willing to propose my own number, but I wanted to give you both a chance to talk about it and if you have numbers you want us to consider to do that. But I think I've heard enough to go ahead and try and make a recommendation to the board. Charles, how about you? Is there you've heard his range, you've heard hers and what the county's official position is. Do you have a number somewhere that you like better than either of those?
I was willing to give a little bit, somewhere at 12 million.
Yeah, okay. Ruth, I see you playing around with yours.
I know, I'm comfortable with the reduction that the assessor has given,
Already done, so.
but I'll listen to any figure that you.
Well, Charles and I essentially came up with the same number. We're thinking 12 million. How do you feel about that? That gives him a little bit more. It doesn't get him all the way down to the 30% occupancy, but I mean, here I'll admit, my bias is you guys are much more pessimistic. I think we'll come back in 2 or 3 years. I don't think it's gonna take us 5, but that's me and my personal opinion about the future.
If I could make one comment about value.
Please.
If we do bring it down to 12 million, which is, I guess, reasonable, that would be a little bit over a 36% reduction in value, and it would certainly be about, I mean, at least 6% higher than any other reduction I've made for any hotel this year. But that would be a 36.3% reduction. Like I said, my range supports between a 15 and 30% reduction, with 30% being the highest. That would bring the value to 13,172,000 and some change, so even. Just something to consider, that at a 30% reduction from the tax year 2020 notice value, that'd be 13,172,000. It would still be one of the highest reductions we've made. That's actually at the top of what the market supports for me. I'd still consider it pretty generous.
I actually thought your initial workup and going down to 27% was moving in the right direction, was generous, but I hear what he's talking about in terms of these owners' experience also. So I'm just trying to,
Sure.
That's the middle name of the board. Charles, are you comfortable at 12 million? I probably am.
Yes, I am.
Okay, since it came up with me first, I will move that we adjust this value to $12 million even on this property as the fair market value. Is there a second to my motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjust to 12 million. We'll vote as the roll is called.
Dr. Ketchel,
Yes.
Mr. Van Willen,
Yes.
Ms. Gaines.
Yes,
So ordered by action of the board. Mr. Browning, hopefully that will help your client keep the family business going for another year. And hopefully we'll all do better 2 or 3 years out, and that these hotels will come back and be a viable business.
So yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed. Thanks for your time and consideration, everybody. You guys have a great afternoon, okay?
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Ray.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good to talk to you. Bye.
You're dismissed.
All right, moving on to our next, another telephone partner or interview we gotta do now. You gotta go dial it in for me, or I will read first, or what?
this back from both of these.
Okay, right. Now, these are the next two agenda items. Dixie Partner V LP And that's protest items 1329 and 1330. This is telephone, so we're going to do that next.
Hello?
Is this David Spada?
Yeah.
This is Ted Catchell. I chair the Tulsa County Equalization Board. And we have before us your protest items for the Dixie Partners VLP on two of our protest items, number 1329 and 1330. We on the same page?
Yes, sir. I need to merge in the owners real quick.
I'm sorry, what? Say again?
He needs to get the.
I need to merge in the property owner.
Oh, fine, go right ahead. Just tell me when you're ready then, and I'll read the stuff into the record at that time. Is that it there? We haven't, did we change the slide for me?
Yes, it's changed.
Okay, what is that? Can you guys see the title? It's another hotel motel, isn't it? Or
I
no?
don't think it's a motel.
I think you're right. We'll ask. Woodland Hills. It's something at Woodland Hills.
8808 South Memorial.
Yeah. Village, Rent Road. What's it? So
Sun and Skin.
the village of Woodland Hills is what we're talking about. There it is. That's a more recognizable picture for me anyway. And I will.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Just a minute. And you have your owners present now?
I'm having a hard time hearing them in the background, Dave.
Yeah, they hear the microphone.
I'm sorry,
You guys
Rick.
are all merged in.
Can you hear us now?
That's better, yes.
Okay. Sorry we have to do it this way, but I know that sometimes it's the only way to get these things done. My name is Ted Catchell. I chair the Tulsa County Equalization Board. My colleagues are Charles Vanderwilly and Ruth Gaines. I will read into the record some of the formal paperwork you have already submitted. And then I'll give you a chance to go through anything else you wish us to consider before we try to make a decision about your appeal. The two items board are 1329 and 1330, Dixie Partners VLP. First thing is just a question to you, Mr. Spada. Is this an economic unit? These two, are we dealing with just one thing economically, and then you're going to speak that way to it? Mr. Spada?
I'm having a really hard time hearing him, Dave. I don't know if you can hear it better.
I couldn't.
No, I can't really hear him all that good either.
Okay, well, let's see if we can, I don't know. Clerk, can you do a better job of punching up the telephone somewhere?
It's up as loud as it'll go.
Can it be, do we have enough wire to get it closer? Can you guys hear us at all?
Well, it's just muffled. It sounds like you're in kind of in a tin can.
Sometimes I feel like I am. We're just having difficulty. We're in a new room we're trying to get used to. Let's see, I'll put my microphone. Is that better? Can you hear me better now? Hello there, David Spada.
Y'all are on the speaker, or maybe, I don't know if there's a way to get off the speaker.
Well, if I get off the speaker, you won't hear me at all. I'll try it, but my hunch is you. Can you hear me better now?
A little bit, maybe, a little bit.
I don't know, Deb. Okay, I'm going to move physically.
Then I'm not gonna be able to pick you up on the recording without the.
If I do that, what do you need this for the recording? Is that all? I don't know. This isn't good. We're gonna have to talk to the county about their cords or something. We need to get the telephone up here, I think, by the next time. Otherwise, we're just not gonna be able to do these telephone hearings. It's too far away.
I think it's their connection,
Oh, you do?
because we
Okay.
just had a telephone
Yeah.
hearing and it was fine.
Okay, now is that better? Mr. Spada?
Yeah, that sounds better.
Don't.
That sounds way better.
Don't,
I have to pick up on the recording.
oh my God. We gotta revisit the audio technician in terms of the county's work here. I'm gonna try and work with you and see if this works. Are you doing okay now, Mr. Spada? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just tried to read into the record both of your protests, and I asked the question, when I get two that are obviously in one ownership, I always ask first off, is this one economic unit? Are we dealing with these two tax parcels as one economic unit?
In my mind, we are.
Okay. Would you just identify it for us? What do you call it? I don't have that in my document in front of me.
The name of the center?
Yeah, the name of the center, is that what it is?
Yes. In Woodland Hills.
Okay, well, the whole Woodland Hills?
It's the village at Woodland Hills.
The village of Woodland Hills, yes, okay.
Right.
All right, here's what I have, and I'm gonna read it into the record again, so you know what we're talking about and see if that makes sense of what you're wanting us to talk about, okay? What it says here on the formal documentations I have in front of me is on the first larger parcel of the tax, that it is at 6808 South Memorial Drive here in Tulsa. That it was previously, last year, this one parcel was on the tax roll for $21,700,000. The assessor's office is proposing to lower this parcel to $15,800,000, and you are requesting that it should go down to $11,281,200 for the following reasons. We lost 28% of value because of the loss of income. We took 28.6% off of the $15,800,000 proposed by the county. I'm going to go ahead and read the second parcel in. You can discuss them after that any way you wish. The second parcel is located close by, obviously, at 6746 South Memorial Drive here in Tulsa. It was on previously for $1,200,000, and they're proposing to leave it at that. And again, you're using the same ratio of loss of income, 28.6%. And you took that off of the 1.12 and ended up with a proposed $856,800. Is that your understanding of the presentation and the appeal as you are making it?
I think that's right.
Sounds right.
Okay. Then
And I'm thinking,
I do have some other. I do.
go ahead, I'm sorry, sir.
No, it's no problem, really. I realize this is awkward at best. I do have in front of me some other documents, not part of the actual, forms that you guys fill in, but you've been submitted some Woodland Hills comparison income statements, detailed age receivables. Now, the board doesn't see these in advance, so part of what you are probably needing to do, if there are particular items in those documents, you need to take us through them and point out why you think they're relevant to our decision making today. Please proceed.
So all those financial documents, why they're relevant, or just?
Well, we assume they're relevant in general. It's the specifics of them that the board, we don't have these documents until literally this moment. So there's important items. We don't expect you to go through it obviously line by line, but if there's particular places you say, now here's where the real information is in these financial statements. This is why we are recommending the reductions we're recommending. I understand the summary, you're saying 28.6 loss of revenue, but beyond that, is there something else?
Yeah, so the majority of the lost income was from the Synergy movie theater tenant, which we all know movie theaters we're just trying to keep them alive right now. So they are paying, instead of $59,000 a month, they're paying $20,000.
Okay. Yes,
And
that's important.
so they're majority, there's a couple other tenants that are on life support as well. And so we added those together, but majority of it's a Synergy tenant. And so if we have that all up, we're missing roughly $400,000 a year of income, which if you take that on an 8 cap, a normal valuation, it comes out to, but if that number was 4.8, I believe, 4.8 million.
Yes.
And I'm on my cell phone, so I apologize. I don't have every number in front of me.
No, that's okay.
And so it's, all these things are on an income approach. I mean, all valuations should be on an income approach. And it's a simple math. We bought it in March. That was pre-pandemic, and as of January, which I believe is the tax date,
Yes.
we were losing an annualized number of $400,000 a year. So it's, $4.8 to $5 million in value that we're losing as of January. And we just put a percentage on that instead of being a raw number. So you can take the raw number or the percentage. The front building, we just use that same percentage, although there is some lost income coming out of that small parcel. But we just kind of made it over the whole. We think it's one parcel together in our mind.
Of course. No, I understand that. Did you guys get all this information already? If you got it already, I'll quick pass it. I'm sure copies. All right. So what you were pointing to is that it was mainly the cinema that was the big obvious shift that you had to change your income revenue from that by reducing the lease rate that you were expecting from them.
Well, it was either they going bankrupt and paying a zero, or they take 20 a month, and we accepted the 20 versus the 60, and so that's basically all they're paying.
Okay.
And as we know, they were closed for several months.
Yes. Okay, that's a big one. I agree. Board understands that. Is there something else other than that one that you particularly want us to look at before I ask the assessor staff to come forward and present their view?
There was a couple other small tenants, the Who Hut and the salon tenant, and there might be one other one that David.
Yeah, there was, on the, detailed age receivable document, we have Who Hot and almost $42,000 lost. And we have Michael Peterson, which is a chiropractic clinic, at almost 25,000.
Okay. Yeah, I see the ones you're talking to, by the way. We've got that.
Yes, sir, and then there's a total there at the very end after.
Okay. So, make sure I'm reading it. The totals ended up, let's see, current balance, and then all the way over to the right. So you think your total there was what? The property D5WH totals, that one, 379,293?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what you're saying is that was the current revenue or with a loss of the current?
That was a loss.
Okay.
That's what we haven't collected.
Yes.
Receivable, I believe.
Right, I see it. Okay. All right.
In fact, from an income standpoint, our lender has just put us in default. So it's way worse than all this.
Okay, well. Now, let me make sure I understood what you just said. Are you saying that you're carrying several loans on this property and the bank that's carrying you right now has put you into default?
Yeah, because they have an income level that, when we purchased the property that we're supposed to maintain, we're 400 grand below that. So yeah, we're in default as a loan. So we're in trouble on the asset.
Okay. Well, there's only so much I'm sure we can do since we're a taxing authority, but that's a very serious matter. I agree.
And all we're asking is, all we're asking for is a fair tax appraisal. That's, we're not asking to help you pay the loan, but.
Okay. But finally, where you're going is essentially using what you sense as your percentage of loss, this 28.6 kind of across the board on both parcels. You would like that to be the ratio of the reduction that the board would grant you at this hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask the Tulsa's assessor staff to address the matter since they are the ones that really make the recommendation to the board. Please identify yourself.
Hello, Clint Vogt, Tulsa County Assessor's Office.
Okay.
And I have some packets for you
Also,
guys.
thank you.
You're welcome.
We're looking now at a package that the assessor has offered us, and he'll go over it, and you should be able to hear him in his discussion. And then you'll have a chance to raise questions in any way you want or to add comments. Okay? Please identify yourself and then go.
Clint Vogt, Tulsa County Assessor's Office. Hello, David. Can you hear me?
Hey, Clint.
How are you?
Hey, Clint.
I'm well.
Good. Okay, so what we're looking at, like you guys said, is an economic unit. So what I've done is on this front page, I've highlighted the two parcels we're looking at. We have a 213 square foot community shopping center and a 10,000 approximately square foot multi-tenant retail improvement. The value for the community shopping center is currently at 15,800,000, and the multi-tenant is at 1.2 million. Those values are based on a multi-parcel sale of 17 million that occurred last year in February.
Before COVID or after?
Right as it was kind of hitting. So really March was when we started working from home here in the office. So this would have been right before COVID kind of hit. We're aware of it. We hadn't quite felt the effects. That's when the sale occurred.
Okay, so the downward trend hadn't really started.
Hadn't quite started when they had purchased the property.
Okay, thanks.
And then if you'll just turn to the second page, trying to keep this color coordination going.
Here,
The orange property you're looking at on the top is the 15.8 million, the larger parcel, and then the green surrounded picture here. It's that hoo-ha, and then that other retail space, that's the smaller $1.2 million improvement. So going to the third page, just a little background information on the appeal and what we've discussed so far. The agent at appeal was asking for a value of 16 million for both parcels, based on the sale price of 16.5 million. And he was saying there was an inclusion of a $500,000 seller's credit for deferred maintenance included in that sale. So he was initially just asking for 500,000 off based on that credit. He did send me materials, however, they ended up in my spam folder, which has never happened. So I ended up not seeing those materials, and I denied based on the lack of evidence, lack of those materials. Since then, I've received what you guys have in front of you, including that closing statement and the detailed age receivable to see that there's, some issue and that there's some merit to that $500,000 seller's credit. Some background sales information. There was a sale in 2006, sold for 14.5 million, confirmed via deed and associated doc stamps. And then again, just reiterating, there was that February sale, it was for 17 million, according to the deed. And then on the next page, I have the deed, just the front page of it with the doc stamps. And if you calculate it, it was a $17 million sale price. I ended up allocating that as I've said before, just reiterating, 15.8 million for the orange larger shopping center and that 1.2 million for the green smaller multi-tenant. Moving on to the next page, I have my first suggestion that the board could potentially use for reducing this property. So that original sale price of 17 million included that $500,000 seller's credit for repairs, major repairs to the property. Much like personal property, this can inflate the sale price beyond typical market value and the value of the real estate and not that credit for repairs. So what I'm proposing is that we take that $15.8 million that I allocated prior to receiving the seller's credit information, and we take that 500,000 away to adjust the orange larger parcel to the 15.3 million. And then that $1.2 million parcel be sustained because it's in a good place. We'll see that in my income approach now. You'll turn to the next page. We have some income information. This is just something I pulled from CoStar. This is asking rents for the property. You can see they range from $10 triple net for larger spaces to $22 triple net for smaller spaces. I assume there'd be some negotiation. Obviously, they're not going to get what they're asking all the time. And conservatively, I'm using a $10 per square foot triple net for market rent for this property.
all across then, you're saying.
Across, I'm using the $10 per square foot for the orange community shopping center. I have the actual hoo-ha rent is something around $15. I think I used that on the hoo-ha property. So the owner sent that information and discussed with me the difficulty they've been having collecting rent from certain tenants, in particular that Synergy movie theater. So what I did to account for the excess collection loss that's occurring is I am appraising the movie theater using its own income pro forma figures to account for lower dollar per square foot rents, as well as collection loss and risk associated with movie theaters during COVID-19. So if you will turn the page one more time, here's another suggestion for something we could do for them in terms of value. What I did is I separated out the Synergy square footage from the community shopping center. So the entire shopping center is sitting at 213,528 feet. The Synergy occupies 60,000 square feet. So what I did was I took the Synergy, I took that 60,000 out, and I appraised that using $4 rent, dollar per square foot. I believe that's what they're actually paying. 40% vacancy and collection loss. That's to account for just that they're having difficulty collecting. 6% expenses because it is triple net, so that's 3% reserves, 3% management. And a 10% cap is a really high cap rate that I don't typically use in retail, but considering how difficult it was for theaters during COVID, I used a 10% cap rate on that. And that at the bottom there, you can see the value for just the synergy was at 1.371941. The community shopping center, I also use an income pro forma. Like I said, I'm using $10 per square foot. It's pretty conservative. 18% vacancy is the actual vacancy of the center according to the rent roll they sent me. 6% expenses, again, low expenses because these are typically triple net leases. That's what they're looking for. And a 9% cap. Ultimately, together, the center appraised for $14,450,000 using those conservative numbers and taking into account the risk with the synergy. On the very end here, you'll see that green multi-tenant improvement pro forma. I use $15 a square foot. That's what Hoo-Ha's currently paying. 18% vacancy again, because we're treating it as an economic unit. 6% expenses because it's triple net and it's low, and a 9% cap for a $1.232 million value, which is where I have it at that 1.2 currently. So if we go to my final page, this top part's just reiterating what I just said. If you wanted to adjust based on a COVID adjusted income approach, I would put the larger orange parcel at 14,450,000, and I would adjust it, and I would sustain that green smaller parcel.
Okay.
And then the bottom is just a recommendation if you wanted to look at sales price or income, which one you prefer to do. So basically, I'm proposing a reduction between 500,000 if you're going based on the sale price, or 1,350,000 based on the income approach, based on the information I've gotten since our informal protest.
Thank you very much. Very clear presentation. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Mr. Spada, did you, obviously you guys have talked before, but did you hear his presentation? Hello?
Dave,
Yeah, I heard it.
Okay.
I didn't hear the whole question. Say it again. I'm sorry, sir.
My question was just, did you hear the presentation from the assessor staff?
Yeah, yes, we did hear it, and if I could just make one comment, in our world, everything is based on an income approach. That's everything in real estate. You know, this isn't a rent house or, you know, a house you're moving into, which is another approach, but it's all based on income. And in our numbers, we're showing a real numbers, not projections. So,
I believe you used your real numbers. Is that correct? Am I understanding it?
I used the real numbers and then the vacant spaces pro forma figures.
Yeah. On the vacant
The
spaces.
vacancy was real. The 40% vacancy for synergy is not real. That is there. That is just to account for the collection difficulties they're having.
That they're having for this COVID year. Yeah, my question is, a big number that jumped out at the very beginning when we looked at this was that you purchased it right before COVID hit. And as I understood, it was a $17 million purchase, of which, you had a $500,000 repair allowance that they owed you. So you ended up with a net 16.5. Is that correct?
yes, sir, that's right.
Okay. Because quite often, your first year, that's where the board ends up saying, okay, fair market sale, that's all we can do. Because all we're trying to do is set the fair market value the first time we see it anyway. On the other hand, the board is sensitive to the fact that this has been a very unusual year with the pandemic, and it seems like the assessor's staff also has understood that. He certainly followed your income approach, similar to what you were doing. He ends up reducing that initial amount down to the 14,450 if he follows an income approach, and then just adds for the the smaller property, the 1,200 that you have it at, ends up therefore with $1,350,000 recommended reduction down to a total for the two of 15,650. That seems off the top of my head. Now I'm going to give my other board members a chance to weigh in here in a minute, but off the top of my head, that seems like he's gone pretty far way down the road, both to take the COVID problem, but also to take your approach to income for the total property from your sales price. Is there anything about what I just said that you want to comment on? Please do.
I'm not sure I understood all that on the numbers. You were cutting out a little bit. Jackie, did you hear the numbers he was talking about?
I kind of heard them, but I didn't quite understand it.
Okay, let me repeat again. He's recommending if we do use the income approach, which he offers us as one way to go forward, that the larger of your two properties, the village part, he adjusted down to 14,450,000 based both on where you began with your sale price minus the 500,000 for the repairs, and then taking into account your rental loss with the theater. He then said that he thought he would recommend on the smaller property, that he would recommend that we go ahead and sustain the original recommendation of 1,2 million. That would mean the total for the two parcels would become 15,650,000.
So so we lose 400 grand in income and then lower by 900 grand. So that would be 70 grand in income. We lost 400 grand in income. So, no, we strongly dispute that. So this is as of January 1 for our town, right?
Yes.
So January 1, we were losing 400 grand a year in income. That's the law as I understand it. And we're going to vigorously defend it. And that's what we believe the income approach should be. And anybody in court of law is going to agree with us.
All right, let me ask him to address that issue since you stated it very clearly. What about that?
What is the question exactly?
He's saying they're showing in their income statement that they lost 400,000 primarily because of the theater rental. Did you take that into account? Is the question he's asking.
Did take that into consideration by splitting out the synergy and giving them a 40% vacancy and collection loss on it, as well as the 10%
Speak over
above
there.
market cap.
Yeah. Say again, go ahead, how you worked with that $400,000 loss.
I took into account, I split out the synergy and valued it using an above market vacancy and collection loss to account for that loss of collections. We typically don't we value using market income pro forma. We don't typically take what somebody is collecting or not collecting from a tenant and directly capitalize that and subtract that from value to value in the county. We're doing mass appraisal.
Do you wish to respond to his statement?
Yeah, so a real appraisal in the real world, not a tax appraisal, takes what's going on in reality. So you can give projections and do all this, but that's reality as of January, what's happening in the property. So,
but are you claiming you can predict the future and that will be your continuing experience, which is really what the tax has to predict?
I think the tax package as of January of 2021, I believe, is the law. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong, but you're talking about the difference between incomes and assessments, right? That is, your balance sheet is going to always be about accounting for incomes, but the tax assessor is trying to talk about market value, fair market value. And that does.
In January, though.
But it does, yes, but it implies, but what you're asking is for him to assume you're going to go along with that continuing loss.
I think, maybe I'm misunderstanding you, but I think it's as of January, we're talking about the value of the property. Which if we take the income approach with the income you're bringing in, the next January, we'll argue about it again. But, I mean, it's pretty simple. The income goes down by 400 grand, you cap it and you go.
That's not been my experience chairing this board for almost 20 years now, but let my other board members, one of whom is an auditor, speak to these issues because I don't admit to being an auditor yet. Please, Charles, would you address his concern about the loss of 400,000 that he does not believe the tax assessor is adjusting for as they should appropriately?
Well, my take, I thought he did a very fair presentation. We're knocking out $1,350,000.
Took out $1,300,000 according to our auditor.
So I thought it was a very fair presentation.
Does that make any sense to you?
So if you lose 400 grand in income on real estate valuation, it's 5 million in value. So you don't get to $1 million in value.
What are the numbers you're talking about, Charles?
Literally, I'm looking at his income approach. 14,450. And the other parcel, 1,200,000 for a total of 15,650.
Okay. I think we're just going to be in dispute here. The board will go ahead and make its judgment. I want to give Ruth King, who's our third member of the board, an opportunity now for her to ask any questions, either about this dispute or other matters that have come to her.
For clarification, I'd like to ask,
Sure.
the property was purchased when?
February 2nd of 20, or February 25th of 2020.
February the 25th of 2020, this property
So
was
And
purchased.
purchased for what amount?
17 million.
Okay, now normally without any
16.5,
disaster.
16.5. But
But it was six, yes, he has in his report that you had that $500,000 adjustment. It was purchased for 16.5.
Now, normally we would use the purchase price as setting the fair market value,
Yes,
but because of the pandemic,
right,
the consideration is being given.
yes.
So, and then one other question, it says we lost 28% of value because of loss of income. We
That's where,
took 28.6.
Yeah.
Off, I mean, so they increased,
no, their initial proposal was to reduce it by the 28.6.
we're giving them a little bit, they're requesting more off than what they actually lost.
Is that right? Are you upping your ante, or you're still wanting us to come up with a total of 11,281 plus 800? That would be 12 million. So roughly, I'd have to put the numbers down and calculate them, but is that what you're asking for? A 12 million evaluation approximately? I'll put the numbers down and add them up.
that sounds about right. I don't have it exactly in front of me, but that sounds about right.
Okay, as opposed to what they're proposing, which ended up with a total proposal of, I lost my,
But my point is, I don't understand why if you lost 28%, why didn't we just put that in there? I want 28% that I lost off. And now we want.
We just took the amount, if I understand you right, we just took the amount of lost income and put a percentage on it, that's all it was. So these are actual numbers we're taking.
we understand that.
We just took
I think we understand that part. I think that you're. Okay, Charles, if we were running that number and we began with the 16.5, I guess that's where I'm still getting a little confused about their number. I can add it up from what they say here. You want to add them? But but it looks like they want almost double that much off. They say they would like to have on the larger parcel, they want 11,281,200.
11,281,200.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then on the smaller one, 856,800. And
856,800.
right,
12,138.
12,138,000. So that's the number you are after as you have presented it to us. Is that correct?
That sounds right, sir. Yes.
Okay. All right, and what the assessor wants based on his presentation, we finally ended up with this, the total of 15,650. So that is a $3 million difference, no question. So that's a real difference. I'm gonna go back to the assessor staff here for a minute, because I thought he was working through and trying to meet your needs, but obviously he didn't go down nearly as far as you think you need on the basis of your loss of income this year. Would you speak to that from your viewpoint as an assessor trying to value on the basis of taxable assessment?
First of all, I would lean heavily on the sale price, and normally I would go with that sale price had there not been pandemic conditions, and especially with the movie theater in particular, those were hit very hard. I thought that I gave due consideration to the movie theaters by getting that very generous synergy income approach. And taking it down to 12 million only a year after a sale of 16.5 just seems,
It's a 4 point.
it's quite a large
$400 jump.
jump.
Even for a
especially-
$400,000 income loss, that does sound a bit.
And it sounds like there is maybe a mortgage or something on the property, so a bank came in and thought it was worth that.
Yes, you said, I believe previously that you did have an outstanding loan. What did the bank, how did they assess it, and what is your loan amount? And
Yeah, say it again, sir.
you mentioned that you had a loan outstanding on this property. When you bought it, obviously for 17 mil, that must have been when you got that loan. Are you still carrying the loan?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
What
yes,
is,
sir.
yeah, well, I'm just trying to understand, are you saying, that loan is, the issue for you? What is the amount of loan you still owe them that the bank is concerned about?
Oh, yeah. They don't let me off those loans. Yeah, we still have the loan, if that makes sense. I'm not sure, completely understand the question, sir.
Well, what's the amount you owe them? What's the principal on the loan?
It's 11 and change,
Okay,
but that was based on a 16.5 value and when we bought it. Now, granted, this is a month before COVID, and COVID is unprecedented in the retail shopping center world, so.
no, and we're trying to be, as we have heard this story, obviously we'll continue to hear it this year. We're trying to be responsive, particularly retail people. So your case is reasonable. I'm not saying that. We're arguing over the amount of relief that a taxing authority can afford on this kind of property going forward. Isn't that correct?
Okay. Well, and I believe this might be a one-time deal, hopefully, if we can get the movie theater back paying.
Yeah.
They're not out of business yet, so I think we're all hoping this is a one-time thing.
Well, we can't, but the taxing authority cannot look at it as a one-time thing. You know, our taxes have to be paid year after year after year. If we lower an valuation and assessment so low that we can never recover over years, that's to do a disservice to other taxpayers. Anyway, I'm willing to try and come up with a number in the board now. We've been as low as their request, which is about 12.2. And we've been as high as his analysis for the assessor at 15,650 after he's done the reductions that he thought was reasonable. So the board, I think we're stuck again with having to
Cut the baby in.
yeah, do something like that, because there's reasonableness on both sides of this argument, but that doesn't give us the final number. What do we think, board? I will yield a little bit, but I would be willing to go down as far as, let's say, 14,250, but that's about as far as I could do. Still feel like I'm helping the owners, but not taking the tax base so far down that the county and its institutions, schools, et cetera, are going to suffer in the long run. So this
14,250.
14,250, that's 14,250,000.
And then keep the other one at the 12. The one-
No, I'm willing to do both of them and make that the total.
Then do we have to divide it or does the assessor?
We'll make them work the actual numbers, okay?
So you're-
I don't care,
you're
no,
bottom
we can
line
do,
is what?
we can do it the other way, we'll sustain the 1, 2, and then I'm doing a 13, what?
Okay.
We got one number for me, Charles, you got the,
Okay, we would sustain the 1, 2, and what is your total cap number?
my total cap is gonna be 14,250,000.
So I'm gonna back all. I lost my count.
You got your calculator, give me a number.
That's on both of them together, sir, I'm sorry.
Well, initially it was on both of them together, but we're trying to we're having this shifted. It's gonna be on both of them together ultimately, but we're having to do the numbers, okay? 14,250 will be the total.
13,050.
Okay, so on the first particle, it's 13,500.
13,050.
13,005.
13,050. And 1,000,200, is that?
And 1,000,200, we will sustain on the other property.
13,250.
I was trying to get to 14,250. Is that
Okay,
where you
that would be 13,050. 13,050.
And then,
1,000,200.
okay. That's going to be my proposal. I think that's as good as we can do for you in this unusual year without costing the county continuing deficit. I will move, I'm sorry, if the owner or the tax rep want to comment about my number, I'll give you one more shot before I take the motion. Your total.
I respectfully disagree with the number, but I appreciate y'all's time.
Okay. Well, we can only do so much. I admit it's been a crazy year for everybody. All right, I move that on protest number 1329, that we set the new tax assessment as 13,050,000 even.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to adjust the fair market value on this property to 13,050,000 even. We'll vote as the roll is called.
Mr. Ketchum,
Yes,
Mr. Vanderwall,
Yes.
Ms. Gaines,
Yes.
this is the fair market value on the first parcel due to the loss from COVID. And the second protest number was 1330, and it was on previously for 1,200,000. and we are proposing to sustain that. I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to sustain that 1,000,002. We'll vote as the roll is called.
Dr. Ketchel,
Yes.
Mr. Vandewille.
Yes.
Ms. Gaines.
Yes.
So ordered by action of the board. Means your total now is 14,250,000 for both of these properties as one economic unit. Is there any final comment? That's the most we can do for you today. Otherwise, our telephone is, we're going to sign off. It's okay?
Yeah, appreciate y'all saying, thank you.
You're quite welcome. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thanks, guys.
I think it was their connections.
Well, I hope so.
We'll see how this next one goes with Jared.
Are we down to the final two? I think so.
Three.
Oh, there's the one tax rate. Let's see, do you get a lot of paper on this one?
Yes.
I'm sure you can throw some of it away, but that's fine. Yeah. Oh, here's, much more.
There was more.
That one too. I think it was, yeah. Okay. Yeah, we got three more, all listed here as Mid-First Bank.
Yes.
All right,
All
it's
right.
a telephone thing again.
These are the three,
Yeah,
and there are attachments, and I need you to keep the attachments with each protest.
okay. But
If
do
you
I
don't-
need to read that attachment to them or? is
Well,
it-
that's gonna be probably what they're discussing.
Okay. Do I have copies or do they have them already? Do you guys
They
have?
have, I have sent you email.
Okay, well, okay, fine.
I have emailed you everything that we have received from the taxpayer before, when, at the posting of the agenda.
But do you guys have these supporting documents on these three?
I've got bits and pieces.
Okay, well, I'll see if there's extra copies.
I've got the actual email, so once it's.
And I don't know what the attachments were. I just take the out of the file and send it. So I don't know if those were additional.
Okay, well, I'll try and manage them. That sounded pretty long.
Hi, Jerry.
I'm sorry, just a minute. Is this Jared Barr?
Yes, it is.
Jared, this is Ted Catchell. I chair the Tulsa County Equalization Board. And my two colleagues, which you will hear from, are Charles Vanderwilly and Ruth Gaines. We're here to look at these three protests that I believe you are to represent from the Mid-First Bank. Is this one economic unit or are we looking at three different protests about different properties?
Three different.
Okay, good enough. We will take them in the order in which they're on our agenda. I will read what I have in front of me, and then I'll give you a chance to respond any way you wish, comment, or add additional information that you think the board should consider in its decision making. Here's what I have on the first one. Protest agenda item 1357 board. Pardon me. It is at 8015 East 71st Street South. It was previously on for 1,160,100. They're proposing to leave it at that. He says he believes it should be reduced to 1 million even. And he provides the following workup attached here on costs and sales. I have those in front of me. There's the affidavit. Did you need that, Debbie?
It needs to stay with.
Okay. Let me look at this. I see. Okay. This is the MidFirst Bank that, at the address, and you show, so let's see what I have here in front of me is a cost approach and also market comparables. Please, Mr. Barr, go through them any way you want, but that's what I have attached to your formal protest.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think on this one, I had someone call me from the assessor's office and had made an offer, and I told them that I would accept it. So I think we may not have to do too much on this one.
Oh, okay. Let me ask that the assessor staff for the record, he needs to identify himself for the board and then make a statement about this.
Daniel Brown, Tulsa County Assessor's Office. I did speak with Mr. Barr. We came to the agreement on setting the value at $1,037,000.
Okay, let me write that number in. Mr. Barr, that's your understanding of the agreement also?
Yes.
Okay, 1 million, what was the number again?
$1,037,000.
1,037,000 by agreement with the owner's rep. Okay.
And this is on what protest?
This is on protest number 11. I'm sorry, 1357 first. And I will move this agreement as a motion that we should adjust it to the 1,037,000 as agreed. Second, it's been moved and seconded. The board will vote as the roll is called.
Dr. Catchall,
Yes. This
Mr.
is-
Vanderwall,
Yes.
Ms. Gaines?
Yes.
Yes, this is the fair market value by agreement. The next item on our protest agenda is protest number 1358. It is also MidFirst Bank. What I have in my formal document in front of me is that this one is located at 4255 South Peoria Avenue East. It was on previously for 1,872,800. They were proposing to leave it at that. He says he believes it should be restated to a corrected value of 1,600,000 based on cost and sales workup. All right, Mr. Barr, tell us, is there another agreement, or do you need to address the board about the additional supporting documents that you have submitted?
Okay, I haven't heard if the assessor's office, I haven't gotten any offer from them, so I'm assuming we're gonna go ahead and move forward with this one.
Why don't I have the assessors come sit up here and introduce himself again so that the record shows who's talking, but we'll do this in a more conversational way than you.
Daniel Brown, Tulsa County Assessor's Office. We did not agree on a number.
Okay, and Mr. Barr, then proceed, and after you do what you want to make your proposal, then I'll ask him to make his proposal.
Sure, okay. As I'm sure you're aware, there's not really a ton of sales in Tulsa County for banks. Kind of started keeping a list of them and using those to kind of go back and see what we could do with the market approach. The subject property was built in 2000, it's on 1.21 acres, 5,265 square feet. So a couple comps that I have here, 401 East 4th Street, older building, it was a bank. As you can see, it came in just over $200 a square foot. Then we have 3101 West Kenosha Street, which was also a bank built in 2003. That was a little bit more recent sale, 1.53 acres, 2,900 square feet. And was at $286 a square foot. We were requesting, as you can see here, $300 a square foot, which is just under 1.6 million. And then on our cost approach workup, pretty much worked all these the same as the previous one that we had. So, sorry if you guys can hear our train out here. Used Marshall and Swift, took bank building, 5,265 square feet with the replacement cost. And then underneath that to take into consideration things that are specific to a bank, safes, vaults, all that stuff. We took the square footage and applied the bank equipment cost to it at $43.50 a square foot. Canopies, we were at $35 a square foot, and then the concrete pavement, $4 a square foot. It was built in 2000, so we did depreciate it for that. Gives us RCN of $588,085. I actually took the land value on this, I believe from the assessor's office, and just applied that to it. And that's where I get the indicated value of $1,667,385. Basically reconciled at 1.6 million between the two approaches.
Okay.
That's what I have.
That's good. I've followed that very clear. Okay. Daniel, what do you want to say? You're essentially trying to get about another $250,000 on this one, right?
Yes, I'm recommending we sustain the value that we currently have set at $1,873,800. So what I prepared for you, just like Mr. Barr said, finding bank comps is few and far between. So cost approach is typically the best way to go about valuing bank. So
Dan, I'm sorry to interrupt. I never got a copy of any evidence. If I'm supposed to get a copy of something, I don't know what's being presented.
For that information, I don't know.
We send the information to the clerk, and then whether the clerk sends it off to others, it's.
We're not allowed to
All right.
share information by statute.
Okay, I'll try to go a little more detail on my approach, Mr. Barr. That way you get a better setting.
I have a feeling you would have to directly request that from the assessor's office. The clerk has just informed the board that she is bound by law not to distribute information directly from her office, okay? So
Does the assessor's office get the evidence that I submit?
yes, they do. No, don't you get the
No.
evidence he submits?
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah,
I get
I thought
the workup. Yes, I get his
you
workup.
get his work up. Yeah. Okay, but that's I'm just reporting what the clerk says is her responsibility. But yes,
Okay.
your workup came to the assessor's office. That's what he's working with, plus what he, of course, brings from his own research and workup. All right, please continue, Daniel.
So again, we are at 4255 South Peoria, so we are on Brookside. Now, like I said, like Mr. Barr said, bank comps are few and far between. So, but I want to first go over the cost approach. So we do use a Craftsman through our system. However, I know most appraisals will go through a Marshall and Swift cost approach. So I'm trying to kind of find a happy medium. So I did use Marshall Swift to come up with the cost approach that you see in front of you. So I'm using pretty much the exact same numbers that Mr. Barr used. The building is Class C, $178 a square foot. So we're basically coming across the same board, $937,170 for the bank itself. I didn't use the bank equipment, but I used the service canopies at $2,800 or 28 square feet, $42.50. The canopies you see at 72 square feet is just the regular canopies you'll see hanging over the door. The concrete paving and the one dumpster enclosures, where I get a total of $1,208,576. And he's at 1.3 million. So we're about $1 million off just on the improvement. And she's at a higher number.
Not $1 million off, you're only at.
$100,000. I'm sorry.
Zero here.
Yeah, really. Okay.
Now, here's where the biggest discrepancy that we're going to come across is the depreciation. Now, this bank was built in 2000, and he's giving it an economic life of 35 years, and I'm giving it an economic life of 50 years. Now, going off Marshall and Swift, using is the Class C, and if you see, look below you, you see, took a screenshot of Marshall and Swift life expectancy guidelines. Bank branches and central government highlighted there, average Class C is 50 years. 35 years is there is not an option for 35 years for a bank branch. Now, if you flip to the next page, the depreciation commercial properties. The bank is 21 years old with a life expectancy of 50 years. You see highlighted is 18%. Going directly off Marshall and Swift, I'm using an 18% depreciation rather than a 57% depreciation. I know we have to kind of jump around. We've already sustained this value because I'm in agreement with them. If you look at the property that we've already agreed upon, the bank at 71st Memorial, built in 1979, again, he used 35 years, and he called it 71% depreciated. So a bank that is nearly twice its age, is saying it's depreciated 57%, and a bank built in 1979 depreciated 71%. So there's a huge discrepancy there. Marshall Swift does not give an option for 35 years to be a life expectancy of a bank. So I don't know how he came up with that economic life. He might be able to elaborate that more on for you. Going below, I'm sorry, let me finish up my cost approach.
Yeah.
So I'm using 18% across the board to come up with my RCN, which gives me the improvement value at $991,032. Adding in the land value that we have at $1,079,320 a square foot, bringing the total value to $2,070,332 or $393 a square foot, and which we currently have it on for right now at 1.8 million and 73,800.
In that cost approach, then the big difference was the lifespan.
Was the life expectancy, correct?
Okay.
Now going off his comps, I'll use the exact same comps that Mr. Barr presented. Highlighted above is the subject property in yellow. Now the first comp at 401 East 4th Street, which is right here downtown. It was built or it sold 2018 for $910,000. However, the following are 2020 a $343,000 building permit was taken out to basically kind of cost per cure. But we're also looking at the land size. The land size on the property, subject property, is 53,966 square feet. The comp land size is 24,000 square feet. Now, but if you look at the improvement price, the improvement square footage solely, subject property is $150 a square foot. The comp price is $179 a square foot. Now the Kenosha property, which sold in 2020, $830,000. Again, now this was the first comp you did see was a bank, and it sold a bank at the end. Below, you'll see the pictures of basically the building improvement that was applied to it. So you can see that there was some investment put into basically to give it a facelift. But again, you're also looking at the improvement square footage on our property, $150.90. The 3101 West Kenosha improvement square footage, $223 just for the improvement alone. If you flip over the page, that is the Kenosha property. So the top photo you see is the bank. Now, when it sold, it did not sell as a bank, it was abandoned. And the person renovating it is actually turning it into an office space. They're enclosing everything. So you can see it's under construction, not as a bank, but it's going to be an office.
So you're saying as a comp, it no longer is directly comparable because it's no longer going to be.
Correct. So typically banks will not just up and leave. Bank of America is going to say our time is done here. And Chase is going to say, perfect, we'll move in and take it.
Okay. What else did you want to say about that?
That's it. Like I said, I think the best way to approach a bank is based off of construction and cost. Sorry.
Okay. Mr. Barr, how would you like to respond to what you've heard the assessor staff present?
I was trying to follow along. It's just hard without a write-up, but Dan, is there any way that after these hearings, would you mind sending me that stuff? Is that okay?
Sure.
Are you able to do that just so I can take a look at it?
Yeah, I got no problem sending you my work up on my cost approach.
Okay. I mean, I don't really have anything else to say, I guess. I mean.
All right, I understand. It looks like to me the only numerical discrepancy was that difference between 35 and 50 years. So that may be just where that's the pivot point that, because even at the beginning, we're pretty close on this assessment.
Right. I mean, but, so I came in around the same, like I said, with the sales approach as well.
Yeah.
Can I ask where you came up with 35 years?
You know, to be honest with you, I tried to go back and look and I don't remember where I got it from somewhere, but I don't know where I got it from.
All right, I think we're going to probably vote to sustain the assessor's value on this, but I want to give my other two board members an opportunity, questions or comments about this.
Only comment I have that the land value is $1,079,300. So that would put a value of $520,700 on just on the building alone.
Right, because we are on Brookside, so the land's worth just a little bit more on that area.
So I would be willing to sustain.
Okay. Charles, do you have other things you want to ask or comment on? Okay. Then I will move to sustain this as the assessor has recommended on this Midwest Bank on Peoria and Brookside at $1,872,800. Is there a second to my vote to sustain?
Second motion.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll vote as the roll is called to sustain.
Dr. Ketchel,
Yes.
Mr. Van Loy,
Yes.
Ms. Gaines,
Yeah.
Board has voted to sustain this as the fair market value for this branch bank. Think. That is the application. I think that's the same. Here you can have one. Close. Okay. All right, we're moving now to, protest 1359 board on our agenda. Barr is also representing this one, and it is also a mid-first bank. The formal appeal in front of me says that the assessor, I'm sorry, let me locate it first. It is at 2400 North 9th Street East. It was on for $2,160,000. They're proposing to leave it at that as a current assessment. He appeals that he believes it should be reduced to $2,050,000 based again on a cost and sales workup. We do have those documents in front of us, Mr. Barr, so if you want to take us through them anyway, that will be fine.
Okay, I'm actually really short on time, so I think I'll just, we'll go ahead and fully accept the value this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a meeting in like 5 minutes, so.
All right, Ms. Brown, you have no objection to his
No,
acceptance?
no, I can go over if you're really interested.
No. Believe it or not, we are not here to judge your work product. Mr. Barr, I appreciate your difficulty and also your willingness to agree to what the assessor has proposed. Therefore, I will move this as by agreement. Is that okay, Mr. Barr?
Sure.
All right. I move that we accept the agreement from the owner's rep to establish the assessor's current value of $2,160,000 as a fair market value. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded to sustain. This is the fair market value. Please call the roll, clerk.
Dr. Ketchel,
Yes.
Mr. Van Willen,
Yes.
Ms. Gaines.
Yes.
Yes, so ordered by action of the board to sustain. All right, Mr. Barr, thank you, and we're going to ring off now, okay?
Hey, just for clarification, so in the future, I need to send something to the Tulsa County Assessor before the hearing and ask for evidence if I want to receive it.
Okay, I want to make sure that I'm not misquoting them. I'm going to ask the assessor's staff to affirm or deny that, but clerk was saying she could not forward it forward.
This is Tim Grass with Tulsa County Assessor's Office. Jared, yeah, if you ask for it, if you just contact the appraiser who you dealt with during informal in the future and ask them. Now, sometimes it's day up that we finish them up, but we can still get them to you before 1:30 if you ask.
Sure. All right. Okay, appreciate it. And Dan, if you wouldn't mind, could you send me those cost workups, please?
I'll have him do so.
Okay, great. Appreciate it. Hey, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
You also. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
I believe that completes today's agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second motion.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. We'll vote as the roll is called.
Dr. Ketchel,
Yes.
Mr. Van Willen,
Yes.
Ms. Gaines.
Yes.
We are adjourned.